From South Carolina Public Radio, this is the South Carolina Lede. I'm your host, Gavin Jackson, and this episode was recorded on February 7th, 2025 from South Carolina Public Radio studios here in Columbia. But we're doing it remotely, so it might sound a little bit different to you. I'm on a different microphone. Just play along with it. Now, on this episode of The Lede, we're looking at some big bills out of the State House, including the state version of DOGE to anti-DEI and the K-12 voucher bill that moved this week. Senator Lindsey Graham gets the green light for his budget reconciliation process, and we have a 2026 Watch update.
2026 Watch.
And break down the tariff turmoil. Remember, that was only just a few days ago.
Wow.
Well, the Lede wants to hear from you in our wind down section, and for you to do that, give us a shout at 803-563-7169. We would love to hear from you guys about the current fall spring we're having, the Super Bowl. It's going to be traumatic, whatever happens here on Sunday. So bear with the Lede. Bear with AT. We're here for him. Let us know. Favorite commercials, 803-563-7169. The fourth week of the legislative session concluded with House leaders introducing several bills that are sure to be attention grabbers, but you know what? They're not necessarily new, not some that we haven't seen before. In fact, one would limit the promotion and use of diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts across the state and in higher education institutions. That's Bill H. 3927. It's also similar to some past legislation. Another would create the South Carolina Department of Government Efficiency, more like the Commission on Fiscal Restraint and Government Efficiency, also known as COFRAGE. DOGE and COFRAGE. COFRAGE? COFRAGE. H. 3926. Now, COFRAGE will consist of 3 appointees from the governor, 3 from the House Speaker, and 3 from the Senate President. And there will also be a non-voting chairman from the Department of Administration that will look to better efficiencies within the state government. Lawmakers would not be allowed to sit on this committee, and members will serve without pay. So you really got to be motivated to clean up state government here. We'll be seeing as this goes through the House. Now, I asked the Speaker how this would be different from the current House Oversight Committee, and here's what Speaker Merle Smith said.
Oversight Committee goes through and it audits agencies and looks at efficiency. But these are legislators bringing this through. They're not dissecting every section of the budget, going and seeing where the money is spent. And I think the beauty of a DOGE is you're bringing people from outside government and having them to take a look at what's going on in agencies and are there efficiencies to be had and are there savings to be had. And that is what you need. You need an outsider approach because that's a different analysis than an insider approach from legislators, and that's what we're looking to build upon.
Except as required by federal law, the anti-DEI bill would prohibit every office in the state and local levels, including institutions of higher education and school districts. It prohibits them all from establishing or maintaining an office that in whole or in part promotes DEI. It would also prohibit hiring or assigning folks to DEI efforts as well as DEI training. Here's House Majority Leader Davey Hyatt talking about the bill.
No, it doesn't do away with the free speech, the kind of things that are federal that are obviously the amendments and things like that. It doesn't do away with that kind of stuff. It just simply says if you're gonna have DEI and you want to do business in South Carolina, you're not going to do it anymore. It's not limited to higher education. The other bills were limited to higher. This is state agencies. This is people that do business with the state of South Carolina. And so, I mean, I believe that what's going on across this country, and to a certain extent in South Carolina, it's got out of control. And we hear tell of agencies that have formed a DEI program or a DEI office, and that's their sole purpose, is to make sure that kind of stuff is done, taken care of. That kind of stuff's got to stop in South Carolina, and that's what this bill's going to do.
Those bills are expected to move quickly, as will one that requires a person to be 21 or over to purchase hemp-infused drinks in the state. Currently, there is no minimum age. Other bills moving this week in the Senate, the K-12 voucher bill officially was sent to the House after its perfunctory third reading vote on Tuesday, having secured the critical second vote, 32-12, last Thursday. Now remember, the legislature passed a private school voucher bill last session, and when it went to the Supreme Court, they found that it was unconstitutional to use that taxpayer money for private institutions. This time, the Senate took another strategy, spending state education lottery dollars instead. The vote Tuesday once again came down to party lines, with the exception of Shane Martin, who's a Republican from Spartanburg. Senator Martin is a former school board member, and he continued to make his case Tuesday by mentioning the state's lottery revenue that continues to dwindle in a friendly back and forth with Senator Russell Ott, who's a Democrat from Calhoun.
Nothing has changed as far as I'm concerned that would not show that absolutely our general fund is going to be impacted by this legislation. Right. It is undoubtable that it's going to.
And Senator, what I'm seeing by what I've gotten from staff, it's going to be upwards of about $110 million in 26-27.
And again, Senator, that's based off of what we're sending to the House. I think it's going to be a lot worse than that.
So next steps when it comes to this bill? Well, the House has yet to offer any indication that they're on board with the Senate's version, and House leaders have told reporters that they're reading the bill, and there's still a chance the House attempts to draft its own proposal. So we'll be watching that one. Also, the House Labor, Commerce, and Industry Committee, also known as the LCI Committee, moved Speaker Smith's energy bill, H. 3309, to the floor, so all eyes on that soon. Back over in the Senate, the Medical Affairs Committee sent to the floor S2, which is a bill that would consolidate 3 state agencies, the Departments of Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse Services, Disabilities and Special Needs, and Mental Health into one agency called the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. The Senate Judiciary Committee, chaired by Horry Republican Senator Luke Rankin, held its first meeting this week since the election of 13 new freshmen to support the upper chamber. The committee carried over 2 energy-related bills, but moved to the floor several bills, including S-143 and S-180. These are 2 bills that we were talking about recently that expand the definition of household member to include people who are or have cohabitated together and people who are presently or have formerly been in a dating relationship. Now, by expanding that definition, which the SC Supreme Court has upheld, it provides a better definition of dating relationship in line with federal language, as this bill seeks to provide protective orders to those who face violence in dating relationships with the assistance of a family court judge. And Charleston Republican Senator Chip Campson's bill to make the Comptroller General an appointed position, that's Bill S-35, moved to the floor as well. A previous bill passed the Senate unanimously last March. So a lot of these bills that we're going to be watching, some have been here before, some of them you know, so they're going to start moving and grooving over the next couple weeks. Other people moving and grooving? Ooh! You got a 2026 watch.
2026 watch.
That's right, Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evette, 1st District Congresswoman Nancy Mace, and 3rd District Congresswoman Sherry Biggs were 3 of many politicians and invited guests who attended President Donald Trump's executive order signing Wednesday. That executive order bans transgender athletes from participating in girls' and women's sports teams by denying federal funds for schools that allow it. In South Carolina, students in K-12 schools are already prohibited from participating on sports teams that are different from the gender they were assigned at birth. In 2020, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that sex discrimination included gender identity and sexual orientation, so that's going to be something to watch when it comes with this EO being implemented. And Mace and Biggs got a shout-out from the president along with others during the event, while Evette sat front row. Keeping with the 2026 watch, and not to leave anyone out in the cold, Attorney General Alan Wilson was doing a couple things this week as well, including a press conference to speak out against drunk driving here in Columbia. And he later announced that he was leading a coalition of other state attorneys general in an investigation into Dr. Anthony Fauci's role in the COVID-19 pandemic response. On Thursday, he issued another press release aiming to deter protesters from interfering with federal immigration officers. So everyone doing their little jockeying here and there, but no one has come out and fully said they're going to do it except one person recently. We'll get to that right now because there are other Republicans who have said they're considering a run for governor, like State Senator Josh Kimbrell of Spartanburg. According to a recent report, former governor and Congressman Mark Sanford is also weighing yet another gubernatorial bid. Remember, he went back-to-back before, but you can serve again, just can't be consecutively. And Thomas Ravenel, a reality TV star and former state treasurer who resigned after he was indicted on federal drug charges, posted on X that he's running for governor. Ravenel last ran as a petition candidate in the 2014 Republican primary for U.S. Senate. And Sanford, he still has $1 million in his state campaign account. What's old is new again, and that includes tariffs. Moving on to that, again, the week started off a bit tumultuous. Maybe you remember it, maybe you don't because it was forever ago. But at least for those financial markets and the global trade, it was very rocky. That's thanks in part to the 10% tariffs President Donald Trump imposed on Chinese imports and 25% tariffs he was set to impose on Mexico and Canada. Our two neighbors reached agreements to postpone the implementation of these taxes. So while the turmoil has somewhat subsided, we still need a little tariff update. So to do that, we spoke with USC Darla School of Business professor William Hawk about global trade and all the fun machinations of it.
So what happened last weekend is that he said that he was going to impose 25% tariffs on all imports from Canada and Mexico and 10% tariffs on imports from China. And, really kind of on Monday announced that he was going to go ahead with that. Mm-hmm. But there was a lot of pushback and had phone calls with the leaders of Canada and Mexico. So those now seem to be on hold. The China tariffs are still in place, though. And really, with Canada and Mexico, it's been delayed for a month. So we don't know exactly how that's ultimately going to pan out.
Yeah, and I know that Canada and Mexico made some security concessions to postpone these tariffs like you're talking about. We're talking about more security on their borders, even though a lot of those decisions had previously been announced, and I guess that maybe they were reiterated with some more benefits there too. But it'll be interesting to see what happens during this cooling off period, this 30-day postponement. Do you think we're going to be having another stare down in a couple more weeks when it comes to this?
That's a very good question, and I think it's possible that President Trump has been very skeptical of the benefits of international trade. This is one fairly constant thing that's been in his policy. So, last week he was very concerned about fentanyl, but then, it could be trade deficits. It could be something else. I don't know if we're going to go back to 25% tariffs in a month, but I would not be surprised if there's, other issues that come up when this month is over.
And when we look at this, the Chinese tariffs too, you're talking about that 10%. Well, China's already announced retaliatory tariffs to the tune of 15% on American coal and liquefied natural gas, and 10% tariffs on crude oil, farm equipment, and certain other vehicles. So those counter tariffs are set to take effect on February 10th. But when we talk about this, and we're talking about perhaps negotiating tactics here, isn't this a lot to ask for when you have the global economy, essentially the American economy, in the balance?
Yeah, so I think really a big concern is even if the president doesn't go forward with these tariffs, going back to 25% on Canada and Mexico, some of the uncertainty that has been caused by these policy shifts really can cause harm on their own. If you're a firm who wants to invest in, say, South Carolina or really anywhere else in the United States, you really want to know, are your supply chains going to be predictable and steady? Mm-hmm. And especially in things like the auto industry and the airline industry, which are so huge in this state, global supply chains that have crossed international boundaries are a big part of that. Mm-hmm. And the uncertainty can really cause damage on their own.
Yeah, manufactured exported products from South Carolina accounted for $36.4 billion in 2023. About $20 billion of that was transportation equipment like you're talking about. And our biggest markets are Germany, followed by Canada, China, Mexico. So a lot of the players that are involved right now. So, when we talk about that, we talk about autos and we talk about planes and parts. What do you think when it comes to a lot of those suppliers and manufacturers who have located maybe in Mexico? So we're going back and forth with Mexico, and then you look at the USMCA agreement, which is NAFTA 2.0, and how that might jeopardize some things, especially when it's up for renewal in a few years. Yeah, no, I think, on the policy end of it, that if the USMCA agreement doesn't prevent things like this, well, there's going to be a lot less willingness to go forward and sort of renew that agreement when it comes up for renegotiation, I think in 2026, if I'm not mistaken. You see, especially in the auto industry and in the airline industry, that ever since the original NAFTA agreement was signed back in 1992,
that you see firms really kind of building out supply chains that cross the U.S., Canada, and Mexico border a whole lot. And this really throws a big monkey wrench in all of that.
And when we talk about this and with this uncertainty, does anyone ever really win in a trade war? It seems like, if it really gets full blown and people are talking about, escalating and retaliating, I mean, are there ever any winners in these situations?
I would tend to say not. I mean, I think both sides really get hurt. I would say probably from the perspective of the administration, they feel like they have leverage because Canada and Mexico, to a lesser extent China, need trade with the United States a little bit more than we need trade with them. But so they say it gives them some leverage, but really in the end, we're all getting hurt by it.
We'll be staying up on all that jazz. And of course, that was USC Darla-Moore School of Business Professor William Hawk. You can catch that full interview on This Week in South Carolina, which airs Fridays at 7:30 on ETV and online at youtube.com/South Carolina ETV. Welcome to the wind down section, our little break from the news. We're glad you're here. A.T. Shire, you're not here with me. You are at home.
No. I'm quarantining, sort of. My family is sick again. Your boy's playing hurt. He's here, but he's not doing well. I was telling Gavin that news is out of the Eagles locker room that so many people on the team are sick. It's going through the team. So I'm just a method fan.
Yes.
Gavin dubbed me the 12th man of the Philadelphia Eagles. It's a mantle that I will accept. I will accept it.
You're going through it in real time as they are, and this is just the
Yes. dedication.
I don't care if it's psychosomatic. It's happening.
Many doctors have told me I was making it
Whatever
up,
it takes for you to be happy this weekend, I'm just here for your happiness. I will be pulling
you.
for your birds,
That's all
especially
I
in your
need.
delicate condition right now. Even though they defeated my Commanders, I'm taking
You want to
it.
lose to the best. You want to lose to the best.
Sure, let's spin it that way.
There you go. That's good. Gavin, speaking of the best, we got a great call from a great friend. Are you ready? Are you ready for this call? This is the only reason we're doing a wind down is to play your call. Okay. So here we go.
Hey, Gavin and AT. It's Joan in Myrtle Beach. I've been listening for all of these months and really haven't been in a mood for calling in. But, the last couple of episodes, I see baby's mama has picked up the phone twice and called in. And, she's an inspiration to the rest of us leaders to just call and say, hey. So here I am. And the last episode, the last wind down with Mayan was a bit of a chuckle. What are the alternatives to boondoggles or shenanigans? So I want to offer up the word caper. Google tells me that it could be an escapade or a goofy joke or a ridiculous adventure or perhaps even a crime. So depending on its use, caper might be a good word on occasion. So in other wind-down topics that have caught my ear, I'd like to think about what people might be doing about climate change in their own backyards. It's an overwhelming subject and, lots to consider. We moved down here 13 years ago, and one of the things that we did was put rain chains on the house instead of downspouts from the gutters. So that really reduces the heavy flow of water out that, rushes out into the storm drains. We also have rain barrels, which is great. We collect rainwater that I then use in all of the pots and plants out on the patio and in the gardens. And since Gavin is now juicing a lot, all those fruits and vegetables and all that pulp, you can compost. Just get a little compost tumbler. It's an all-in-one unit. You just spin it around, and I don't put any meat, oil, or dairy in it, but, I end up with some pretty dark, rich stuff that, I haven't killed any plants or trees or shrubs yet with it, and I don't put anything into the landfill as much as possible. So what else are people doing? There's lots of good ideas out there, and I'd love to hear some more. So if you are going to be doing another Lead live taping, think about Myrtle Beach. It would be great to have you guys out here. Take care.
Joan, thank you for calling. What a wonderful voicemail, and not to mention the inspiration from baby's mama right there, just handing off the reins to Joan like that. And
So
we
good.
are looking into coming to the Grand Strand in April, Joan.
Yeah.
So it has been on our top our list of things to do. It's been at the top because we've
Forever.
been dying
From the
to go
start.
for a live taping during spring break in Myrtle Beach.
One of the first times we ever spoke about doing a live show, Gavin and I both instantly said, "Oh, Myrtle
break.
Beach spring break would be a killer show."
And maybe we're just still mentally preparing for it because we haven't gotten there to it yet.
It's been 7 years.
But yeah, and then also Joan, another great listener to our podcast, Britton, she was telling me that I could compost down at City Roots, which is right nearby me in Rosewood.
Yeah,
So I'm going to be keeping my pulp and bringing it on down so I don't have to eat all of it. All my mulch, all my edible mulch.
Joan, also, thank you for calling. I really should include the audio while we're listening to it sometimes, because as soon as you mentioned juicing, Gavin tuned right in. I mean, laser beam in on that stuff. So as far as green initiatives, I've been interested in a rain barrel or two in my life. You know, I would do it. I'll dabble in some barrels. You know,
I mean, if I had my own place, I would definitely I'd be collecting all the things.
Gavin likes to water things, to nurture the plants in his life. He's got vines crawling all over his place.
It's a metaphor.
It's a big time metaphor. Hard to understand though. If you're a therapist, please call it.
What's it all mean? Don't touch them. Don't touch them.
But Gavin, you know, your boy right here, like I said, playing hurt. I'm not doing good.
So how besides your just your current situation with your health,
my distress, my dis-ease.
Do you think that's what this is? Do you think this is all just brought upon you because of just
my whole
the
family,
stress?
Rena, Caitlin, and me? We're all going through it. It's psychosomatic. It's in the blood.
I don't know if you want me to. Do you want me to engage you over the weekend? Should I just let you be? Is there something I can help you with?
If you know any shaman or witch doctors,
Aaron
please.
Rodgers, they will call him.
Call Aaron Rodgers. I'm sure he's in a deprivation tank somewhere and or doing ayahuasca. So find out what that can do to help the Eagles, because we need an edge any way we can get it. Okay, so Gavin, please say the credits as soon as you possibly can.
We're gonna stay positive.
So I can take a nap.
Yes. Thank you for calling Joan, our little caper out there. And give us a shout like Joan did at 803-563-7169. Let us know where you guys want us to come do a live taping next. Like we said, we're looking at the Grand Strand, but there's some other places we're looking at as well. Let us know where you're at. And you can always show us your appreciation by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. We love that too. Get my words out here. In a voice mode, 803-563-7169. You can stay up to date with the latest news on scetv.org and southcarolinapublicradio.org. And don't forget to support your local newspapers. The South Carolina Lead is a production of South Carolina Public Radio. Our producer is A.T. Shire. Amy Crouch is our supervising producer. Sean Birch is our executive producer. This podcast is produced with support from PRX and is made possible in part by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, as well as listener contributions to the ETV Endowment of South Carolina. For the South Carolina Lead, I'm Gavin Jackson. Be well, South Carolina.
COFRAGE.
COFRAGE. The new fragrance from the state of South Carolina.
COFRAGE.
COFRAGE.